Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Berlin Select Board meeting for Monday, January 9th, 2023. It's our first meeting of the new calendar year, as opposed to fiscal year. Let me get the announcements while I call the meeting to order, but the meetings of the Berlin Select Board are generally recorded for transmission on both the Berlin Cable Access television channel and YouTube. Your voice, your image, and or your telephone number may be recorded. Before we get into it, we're going to have a slight adjustment of the agenda. Just to start off really quickly with Chief Clark. And I think it's Kristen, you're going to take it away once we win the lottery of where is Chief when he shows up today.
So I believe Chief Clark is here. And I have to say that Chief, we lured you here this evening under a bit of false pretense. And for that, I do apologize. We don't have any questions on your budget, and we don't need you to give a report. We wanted to take an opportunity to thank you for everything that you've done. And we figured if we told you we were going to do that, you might not come. So we also have Josh Duhamel with Meg Kilcoyne, Representative Kilcoyne's office here this evening. They have prepared a citation for you that obviously we're virtual, so it's a little bit difficult to present it, but we found a way to do it. And with that, I will turn it over to Josh, who goes by Dewey, to read the citation for you, Chief.
Hello, everyone, and congrats, Chief. I'm sorry that the representative wasn't able to hop on today, so I'm here in her stead. You know, not as great, but, you know, I'm all right, I think. But be it hereby known to all that the Massachusetts House of Representatives offers its sincerest congratulations to Chief P. Kenneth Clark in recognition of your dedication and service to the town of Berlin Fire Department. The entire membership extends its very best wishes and expresses the hope for good fortune and continued success in all endeavors given on this day, the 9th of January, 2023, at the State House, but virtually here in Berlin, by Ronald Mariano, the Speaker of the House, and offered by our State Representative, Megan Kilcoyne, signed by both. Very, very honored to be able to present it to the Chief. And once again, the representative is sorry she wasn't able to hop on, but hopes to hopes to see you soon and congratulates you once again on all your hard work. So thank you.
Thanks, Dewey. Chief, do you want to say a few words or not? We're just, the retirement's going to get to all of us. And so before we all got too teary-eyed and we got too close to the last minute or a snowstorm suddenly caused you not to be here, we thought we'd do this tonight.
Oh, I think we have you on mute, Chief.
Yeah. Yep, he's still muted.
Oh, is he having, let's see.
Nope.
He's having an issue, I think, with his, I was just trying to see if I could unmute him. No?
Oh, that means we can go on and say nice things about him, but he can't retort it. Oh, there he is.
There we go. No.
Oh,
Oh.
No?
Nope.
that's the microphone problem because the little mute button is gone and now we can't hear him.
Sign language. We'll miss you, Chief.
Yeah. You try one more thing.
He's gonna write us a note.
Well, while we're doing that, I wanted to both thank Rep. Kilcoyne and Dewey for coming this evening and presenting that. Mary has put together some photos for the Chief of his time here in Berlin that she is. Oh.
Mm.
Oh, I like that photo the best, actually.
That's a good one.
Of course, the forever monthly sort of presentations on our board meetings.
I remember that meeting. Oh, that was Michael.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's
There you go.
Always with the kids.
That's a good one.
I was the chief for a day.
Is this the granddaughter by any chance?
No, that was the little girl who won the contest
Oh,
to be
okay.
chief for a day.
Yeah, she did win. And Chief just called. He says he's getting out and coming back into the meeting. And this is the day that he was appointed.
Oh,
Yeah.
God,
Okay.
are we ever going to meet in person again? Oh, look at my hair.
Looks very
Oh.
nice.
I'm gonna see, let's see if Chief is coming into the audience shortly. There is also a resolution if you'd like to consider that.
I was just going to mention that, Mary. Thank you. Do you, when he comes back on, Mary, do you want to pull
Yep.
that up on the screen?
I will, I'm looking for him.
Yeah, as well.
Any second now.
Oh, the wonders of technology.
There are days it saves us and it's days that it's frustrating.
True.
Although I wouldn't have a job in IT support if it all worked
Oh,
all the time. So-
Maybe he won't come back on. Maybe he's bolting.
Uh-oh.
Oh,
I'm in big trouble then if that's the
Irish
case.
exit.
Nice job, Kristen. Good job. Well done.
Well, I think I scared him off at first because I said y'all had a question about the ambulance as I was trying to think of something legitimate. And he goes, I thought we answered all those questions already. And I'm trying to go, oh, well, if you could talk a little bit about it, that'd be great. So, all right. Scott, I don't know if you want to read this one.
Sure, I can see it on the screen. So whereas P. Kenneth Clark has, with great skill and dedication, performed service to the Berlin EMS chief since August 6, 2019, really at midnight. Chief Clark was coaxed out of retirement to serve Berlin following his brief retirement in January 16th, following his 9 years tenure at Hopkinton Fire Chief. Until Chief Clark has served his hometown Hopkinton Fire Department for 43 years, having joined the force in 1973 as a call firefighter. Whereas Berlin has benefited greatly from Chief Clark's sage leadership and wisdom in terms of leading Berlin's fire and emergency services divisions, as well as serving as its emergency management director, who served with distinction during trying times, including the COVID-19 pandemic, and during the mass displacement of seniors from Northbrook Village to housing complex during its first COVID winter during a water main break. Whereas Chief Clark has served as so-called strong chief, provide a strong heart and soul to a growing department to help professionalize the weekday staffing, increase training for all staff, and to look forward to improving the public safety radio network and studied for the potential provision of advanced life support medical services. And whereas Chief Clark constantly chooses to shine a spotlight upon on his upcoming crew and instead of himself, and despite his own June 2001 Mass Firefighter Service Award and Hopkinton Board of Selectmen commendation for his cold water rescue on the Whitewater, he's done actually a lot of highlighting of what his team has done. And it's a great team. So therefore, now we, the members of the Berlin Select Board, do hereby proclaim Tuesday, January 31st, 2023 at midnight as Chief Clark's last full day on the job and Kenneth Clark Day, Berlin Select Board.
Nice.
Yeah. He'll watch this on video later on.
Yeah, I think he's bolted.
As he's yelling at me and cursing me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And many thanks to Mary for putting that together. And thanks to Dewey from Replica Coins office from being here as well. We really appreciate you taking the time out. Chief will be very much missed.
I do remember
Indeed.
a real quick story. I remember that the Northbrook Village, that water main break, because I was with Hank Naughton at the time, and he was very obviously helpful, hands-on, and just letting our office know about anything we could do to help out and whatnot. But seems like he had it under wraps. He knew what he was doing. So
That is great.
Well, you'll have to let him know that when his day is, since he's not here.
Kenneth Clark Day.
We will.
Well, I'm sure we all will on that day.
Sure, he'll be in my office tomorrow morning, so I will make sure to let him know.
I'll put it on Facebook tonight, so plenty of people will tell him as he walks in tomorrow.
Good.
He's gonna love the notoriety on that one.
Oh, as he joins the, as he
Oh,
actually.
he's back. He's back, Mary.
I just grabbed him. Let's see.
Okay.
Oh. Come on, chief. Okay.
Oh, wait to see if the camera works. this
Oh,
time.
he's got the wife in on it.
Oh.
We're up.
Hey,
There he is.
Yeah, my wife Marie saved me again on the how to turn that. It was off for some reason. I had to go into settings. Never had to do that. My apologies. And,
You're not going to miss new meetings when you're retired, are you?
not yet, but close. I actually don't even look forward to the end. I enjoy it every day. It just, I've always been very blessed that way. I've never had a day I get up in the morning and it said, oh, I wish I didn't have to go to work, you know? So 51 years this month. So been on the street. So
Well, congratulations.
thank you,
Yes.
Chris.
And
Well
thank
deserved
you for so
recognition.
much time.
No,
Chief, can I still call you at your house and ask you random questions for no reason?
you can call me anything you want except late for supper.
Okay.
Well, Chief, we had a commendation. What was the right word for the?
Proclamation?
A proclamation that to declare your last day of work,
You've got that.
Kenneth Clark Day in the town of Berlin. So
Thank you.
we'll have a full day. Mary will get that out to
There
you.
it is.
You've done some incredible things in your time here. Got us through some really. I mean, again, the emergency management director and chief during COVID-19. So as we were all making things up as we went along.
That was a great team effort by everyone in the community, though, top to bottom. You guys were involved, everybody, and especially my personnel who dealt with it on a day-to-day basis, did really, really well. You know, so I'm very proud of them. So it's easy to do it when you have really good people.
Great.
Wow.
I'm sorry I played any role in lying to get you on camera tonight, chief.
Thank you.
That's fine. No, I never even smelt a rat there. So it's like,
Good.
like
Apparently
I got all
we're
my
great
stuff here.
liars.
I got all my stuff out on my desk here, and it's like I was, you know, I was waiting for Pig's questions. So,
Get ready to school everyone.
yeah, but thank you. No, it's been ever since that first day, I got a telephone call from Peg and went in and sat with Chris and Margaret the very first time I came up to Berlin. It's been a good run. I've enjoyed every single day. And it's like some were good, some were bad, but yeah, take the bad with the good.
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for your support all through.
Well, we enjoyed having you, chief,
Thank you.
every single day.
And
Appreciate
Chief,
you, Chief.
absolutely. And Chief, you know, I've only had the pleasure of working with you. Believe it or not, it's been 4 months. I
There
don't
you
know
go.
where the 4 months went. It goes fast, but it has been an honor and a pleasure. You're a consummate professional and you're calm under pressure. It's just so great to work with somebody who knows what they're doing and is just a great leader and a resource for others. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. It's appreciated. Yep. Not comfortable when it's about me. I'd rather be.
I
doing
know.
something else, but it's like, but thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dewey, for coming on as well. And much as I'd love to just chat about things all night, I think we'll
I'll let
jump
them
to
loose.
the agenda here.
You got real business to do. Thank you very much.
Take care, Chief.
Chief.
Take care of
Congratulations,
yourself.
Chief.
If I haven't seen you guys, Happy New Year.
You too.
I think we're going to just stay with hearing and appointments for a moment. We'll go back to minutes and correspondence because we have a fairly actually large audience today. And so several of them have come for things that are hearings. I think if we do the new site pavilion at Berlin Memorial School, the rec committee next. I think that's Bob in the audience or Bob Holmes. It's good.
Hey, folks.
Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
Great. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Doing well.
Tell us about the new site pavilion at Berlin Memorial School that the rec committee is talking about, or contemplating, I think is the right word.
Sure. Yeah, so Recreation formally proposed to the CPA committee last month, maybe, or the month before, to erect a multi-use pavilion on South Commons between the school and the pond in that sort of large grassy area. We envision it as a place to serve a number of purposes. First and foremost, providing just respite from the sun on hot summer days when families use that area. There's really no place to escape the heat. We envision it being used to support things like the fishing derby. We will, as part of the proposal, we'll be constructing an improved walkway from the parking area to it. So those that maybe have limited mobility will be able to get a little deeper into South Commons and enjoy the space with more ease. We see it being used as a no-cost gathering area for community groups, birthday parties, just a nice community space that can be utilized by a number of folks for different purposes. The pavilion itself, as proposed, is about 25 by 50, set on a concrete slab with half a dozen picnic tables underneath. It'll have solar-powered safety and security lighting that automatically turn on at night. And we chose the structure, we were inspired by a similar structure at Savage Field in Clinton. They erected a similar pavilion that gets a lot of use, and we thought it would be a great addition to South Commons. We made the proposal. CPA came back to us with a few questions, one of which was, are you sure you can put it there? And Mark Adams, who's on the call here, started inquiring and wanted to just double confirm that we were good. And I think someone requested that we join and just share a little bit about the project and make sure that you guys are on board before we go too much further.
Yeah, so this is sort of earlier in the process to make sure you don't go all the way down the path and discover that, like, the board that controls ultimately the land there said no or something. Yes, I got it. Peg, Chris, you have questions?
So it is town land, I'm assuming, right, Kristen?
Yeah, so I had to do a little research. Margaret had started drafting a lease with the regional school district for the school, but it's not executed at this point. So the land does still fall under the control of the select board.
I don't know if there's an outline. Maybe Mark, I don't know what Mark found out either, but maybe is there an outline of land that the school is able to use?
From the maps I saw from the assessors, it's all just under town land at this point. There's been no delineation from what I can tell.
Okay, my other question was, and maybe Scott, you could side with me on this one. Can the old structure that's there, that old barn, come down?
I have always wanted that old barn to come down. And do a bunch of stuff to do it, but I wouldn't make their project contingent on it. I think I might still my own crusade to potentially at some point get that land that is dirt to a paved parking lot so that it's easier to roll on and that barn removed. But I see this as a complementary project to that. It might actually help people want to remove that barn that is there.
Yeah, it's a bit of an eyesore.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, well, other than that, I don't have any other questions.
Peg?
Is there any need to involve Concom in this, just to make sure that there's, no critters from the pond, living somewhere on the land that you want to put this?
That's a great question. I don't know. It's probably a bridge we should cross and just connect with those folks to make sure that they don't see any obstacles to putting it at the site that we're proposing either.
Yeah, they don't have a meeting this week, but they have one next week. So you might want to reach out and see if you can get on their agenda quick before it fills up.
Yeah, I imagine. Sorry, go ahead, Peg.
No, go.
Because I imagine that before the construction actually starts, at some point, it's going to require potentially a planning board or other sort of committees in town to approve on it.
Sure.
Just, you know, bureaucracy is not fun unless there's a whole bunch of committees involved.
I believe there's a vernal pool, but it is to the back of the parking lot.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I don't think it would be in the area that it's proposed, but it'd be a good idea to check.
For sure.
Also,
email
a
that.
question later on, if something ever happens to the pavilion and it needs repair, something's broken, who's responsible for the repair cost for that?
Great question. I mean, I don't know if recreation, it would fall under recreation or facilities, or kind of how it would kind of work down the line, but that is a good question that, you know, we should have answers for as well.
That might be a good idea to have recreation be responsible, but they would be responsible for perhaps bringing an article to town meeting if something was broken.
Yeah, I would think, yeah, kind of like how the tennis courts operate, like it falls kind of under recreation, but obviously we're not out there, you know,
Yeah,
under control of much, so.
depending on what the budgeted item would be.
And final question, where it's an open type of gazebo, I'm sure if there's an event, there's going to want to be tables and chairs. I highly doubt that people will just stand there. So any type of relationship with a vendor will be up to people to go find tables and chairs to bring in, impact on the town. And then I'm also going to assume people may want lights or some type of electrical. So where is that in this as well?
Good question. So our proposal today includes the purchase of 6 commercial grade, galvanized steel and composite picnic tables that would be sited permanently there at the pavilion, potentially taken in, when in over the winter, just to help keep them long lasting. For now, the proposal does not include bringing any hardwired utilities in. We just have the solar powered lighting, as we see it, as just kind of a safety and security thing to keep some light shining in the dark hours. As we understand more the usage patterns of the pavilion, we've certainly talked about bringing utilities to it later on as a follow up, and we think that that's definitely a viable approach. But we're trying to eat the elephant one bite at a time.
And then 2 more questions, and I promise I'll stop because I've loaded you up enough. Bob, you talked about picnic tables. In the event that they're not used, what are the plans for where they're going to be stored? Yeah, I know, another great question. Don't need an answer now, but please put that on the table. And then as well, if there are activities that are open to the town where there will be potential lighting and or music, have the abutting neighbors been spoken to about that? Because I know that there's always concerns about light and noise. There was already some, scuttle on the noise that a pickleball court brings. So just want to bring it up that if there's some type of get together that neighbors are informed, so we're not going to have, why didn't you tell me issues going on like there already are in town.
Yeah, fair. Seems like maybe some kind of use policy might make sense, just something simple and basic to get started. And, as we see how the community uses it, if it does start to maybe push the limits a little bit, we can revise those policies.
Okay. I'll leave you alone for now.
Right, I was gonna say, and I wasn't expecting sort of all the answers to be done this time. I think this is good to kind of get some of the questions we'll have to do. Obviously, this is still dependent on, a CPA and town meeting votes and other stuff like that. But I mean, I personally think the concept is great. I think it uses that area of South Common better, makes it more useful, gives a place to hide from the rain during the fishing derby when those come up as well. And so I think right now they're just looking for just a general, this makes sense sort of a vote at this point, or motion at this point, to give you sort of the go ahead to keep going down this path.
Right. And if I can add a little bit to that too, Scott, I think what you'd be looking for is, approving that particular use on town-owned land, contingent upon approval by all other regulatory bodies that are required.
I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Is there more discussion on this?
Not yet.
Not yet. No, yeah. I'm looking forward to using this as a, help us get rid of that brown barn. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.
Great. Thank you, guys. I look forward to seeing where this goes and be ready for it. If it becomes an article for town meeting, doing some public outreach, talking to folks, both turnout at the town meeting to make sure you get the support and just making sure people are aware of it will help the odds of anything passing.
Sure. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you
Appreciate
all.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thanks for coming.
All
Take
right.
care.
Bye now.
Yeah, to get back to my agenda here. So the next item is a hearing to request to reallocate some fiscal year 23 capital funds from the Berlin-Boylston Regional School District.
Yes, so I received a request to reallocate some capital funds from one, there was basically an overage in one approved expense article and one item that they're delaying completion upon. And so the recommendation was to have them come before the select board and also to ask that we have someone from capital and finance here as well to listen in and bring it back to their respective committees, just so that the schools didn't have to go before three separate committees 3 separate times. So that's part of the reason you see so many folks in the audience, I think, this evening. But I do have Nancy, the finance director from the schools, here this evening to explain the request and answer any questions that you have.
So I just wanted to ask you, Kristen, has this been run by June?
It was actually, yes, and June's recommendation was that because it is allocated as a lump capital sum line item, that the funding can be transferred, but because we do vote individual projects within that lump sum, she recommended that we do have the approval of the select board, capital and finance to do so.
Okay, that answers my question.
Yeah, I think this is an agenda item because June, there's a chance it's not sort of legally needed, but it makes sense from a procedural, everyone on the same sort of standpoint. So even if it wasn't legally needed, which it might be, having all of us sign off on it really makes sure that everyone is covered and someone doesn't come back and bite someone later on for making this change and saying they weren't in the know, or at least the powers that be in the know.
Yeah.
Are you there, Nancy?
Oh, and Superintendent Costello, I see. Is here as
the
well.
superintendent is here as well.
Here
we go.
Hi, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, Carol.
Hi.
Well, thank you for having us. And Kristen, thank you for having us come to one meeting. It's very helpful. We really appreciate it. So we've received $18,000 in the FY22 budget for the LED sign for Berlin Memorial. So these funds weren't used in fiscal year 22, and we're actually not forecasting to look at this project again until fiscal year 25. So we would like to make a request from the committee to use this $18,000 towards the equipment platform project that was in the 23 capital budget. So we received $35,000 for this project, and it came in at $53,000, which is exactly $18,000 over. So that's one of the requests.
And just, I think I'm aware of it, but if you would say for the people watching or for the record, sort of what made that project go $18,000 over?
So the equipment platform is the HVAC in the gymnasium. And I think it was just a lot more work than anticipated to get up into the ceiling to do the repair work. And if you want more detail than that, I do have our facility director. He's in the audience. He could probably go into it a lot more detail than I can.
Nancy, I think for, the benefit of folks that are in the audience who really don't know that, if, you know, maybe a little bit more explanation beyond, you know,
Right.
the HVAC in the school, just so that folks know, because when I saw equipment, you know, platform renovation, my first thought was, what? And then I had to go look for it. So, that would be
in the audience, Dan Arella, Arala. He's our facility director, and he'll be able to help. Oh, there he is.
We're in the process of promoting him to the
okay.
Nancy, before you bring on Dan, who I actually know from my former town. Hi, Dan.
Oh.
Nice to see you. I just have one question. You mentioned the Berlin Memorial sign. You said it was 18,000 from 22?
Yes, that was in the fiscal year 22 budget. Yes.
Okay, because I was thinking that they were both in the 23 budget, so they are crossing fiscal years then.
So they're crossing fiscal years, that's correct.
Okay, so that's something I will just have to have a conversation with June to see if anything does have to be taken further, because I was thinking they were both within the same fiscal year. But if they're crossing fiscal years, there may be a vote that does need to be taken, and I'll have to confirm that.
Okay.
Go for it, Daniel. Tell us a little bit more about the equipment platform.
So the equipment platform was all done before I started working for the Berlin-Boston schools. What I got out of it from the custodian and the previous director, it was really no safe way to get up there to do work on the air handler units. We had a HVAC contract that actually fell through onto the stage. That's why all that work had to be done to it. Now, with it being completed, I myself, the custodian or the HVAC contractor, could go up there and do work like change belts, filters, or check the free stats of the units.
I actually almost think I remember that being an issue when I was on FinCom. Chris, we've tried to find the money for this before because it's been a safety hazard for a while.
Yes, and now once the work is done, will it be more easily accessible to change filters and that kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I remember too.
It's good out there. Other questions, Chris, Peg?
Wait until we hear back from Kristen and June on going over the years.
Yeah, I think we might just do a general motion of support for the concept of it. And if it takes something more, we'll come back. But if it doesn't, we'll at least have sort of satisfied that part of it. If there are members of the Capital Committee or FinCom that have a quick question they want to ask, they can raise their hands. I know we have to be a little careful about promoting too many of them. Eloise, thank you.
I have no questions. We've heard this before. I will bring it back to capital planning. Thank you.
Thanks. Good. So is there a motion then to, provided it's due? Nancy, sorry, you had something else you wanted to say?
I don't know if you want this. There's a second part to this with another fund. Do you want to make the motion and vote first and then I talk about the second part? Or do you want to do them together?
Let's do them together so we understand it all as a picture.
Okay.
Go ahead on that second one.
So there's another fund for parking lot repairs that we received in fiscal year 22. This amount was for $15,000 and we currently have $11,600 remaining. So at this point in time, we do not have an immediate need for these funds. But with snowy weather, normally the plows dig up the parking lot and repairs are needed. So we're making a request if we can hold the funds for future repairs. So making a request from rolling it over from 22 to 23. That's the second part.
So it's from one year to the other again?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
If I understand, capital funds are actually, unlike sort of expenses, are sort of a fund that sits there until it is used up or dissolved. At least that's what we do for town warrant articles. And so I don't know if the crossing fiscal year is as critical as it might be, sort of separate motions, but we'll, I'll
Okay.
leave some with. So we might have a caveat in there, provided, we're not doing anything sort of untoward.
Right.
I think that sounds like the right thing. So I think could be a motion to allow the sign funds to be moved into the equipment stage or platform use, and to allow the parking lot repair funds to still be used for parking lot repairs. And provided there's not a legal issue that comes up when we dig into it a little bit further.
Scott, I would make that motion.
As long as Kristen can come back on the 23rd with an update, I'll second it.
Okay, I'll make that note right now. And then, so I think we're then ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone eye.
So I'm going to make the note. I usually keep future agendas open, so when requests like this are made, I can just add it.
Sure. And just to be a little bit more clear in what I'm clarifying, it works obviously a little bit differently with schools. I think it's basically a repurposing of an article from FY22 to a use for FY23, but the funds are still obviously there. It's just being reallocated toward a different purpose. So I just want to confirm, but given the fact that I missed it was in a different fiscal year, that it doesn't require us to just do a town meeting vote to repurpose. Hopefully not, and we can move forward. But I will confirm that, and I'll let you know as soon as possible.
Okay. And I've put that on the agenda for the 23rd.
Great.
And I just want to say welcome to Carol as our new superintendent, and Nancy as the finance director, and Dan as the facilities superintendent.
Thank you.
All
Thank
new
you.
people.
Chris, I'm an oldie, but I am grateful
Oh,
to
but
have
this is
these-
a new position.
It is a new position. I am grateful to have these two folks on board with me on the team, though. They've been so helpful, and we work together so well. So I appreciate them with me. It's a good team.
Good.
Yes.
Well, I don't know you, Nancy. I'm sure you are wonderful. I can only speak to Dan because Dan and I worked together for about a year in Leicester, Dan.
Yeah.
He's wonderful. You guys are very lucky to have him.
Thank you.
And again, it's really nice to see you again, Dan.
You as well.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking time tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good to see you all.
Thank
We'll
you
see
very
you
much.
again several
Yes.
more times too.
Thank you.
Okay. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Night.
And so I think that takes us to the nightly general department update. Police, Chief Shartner.
Hi, good evening.
Hi, Chief.
Hi there.
All right. So I'll start off the month of December. We had 915 calls for service. 8 of the cases involving criminal charges. We were up to 27 motor vehicle accidents last month, 8 having injuries, 58 motor vehicle stops with 29 citations issued. Last month, we had the honor to escort the West Boylston High School football team, which hosts, I think, 5 or 6 Berlin kids that played for them, to the Super Bowl at Gillette. And then on a return, the week later, we actually participated in the parade as well. Officer Andre, as a member of SEMLEC, was deployed to the Greater Lowell for a drug operation. You may have seen on the news. I think they referred to it as the Cocaine Cowboys, where 21 arrests were made. And obviously this size event was state, local, and government agencies working together. Officers Plant, Colony, and Detective Trangone started working on a credit card fraud case / narcotics case last month. It is still ongoing. It turning from a call from Homewood Suites to unable to pay for their hotel room to a motor vehicle stop with narcotics, and turning into something much greater, and so ongoing. Let's see, December 10th, we saw our first significant weather activity in town. We've talked about ways in the past and how it increases our traffic, especially at the Traffic Safety Advisory Committee. We end up having a 6-car accident on of all roads, Story Hill Road. People following ways because the highways were bogged down with traffic. So people got off at 290. I actually came in that night and I booked an accident down on River Road. People going to Lowell that were, once again, using ways that took them off the highway and put them on River Road West, which was a much treacherous road than the highways, and they crashed as well. I guess for future reference, whenever there's a snowstorm, don't follow ways. Unfortunately, that accident on Story Hill, we did have an officer injured who is still out IOD for probably at least another 4 to 6 weeks. Our next Traffic Safety Advisory Committee meeting will be in February. Our 2022 cruiser is in, and we're still waiting on a build date. I've emailed them weekly. I think I'm starting to be a nuisance to them, but I don't care. We paid for something. I would like to get the car as quick as we can. And Officer Ledoux completed the academy and has started working, and he's on with us tonight.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. Welcome to the academy. Welcome to the department. I was going to say, here he is.
Good evening.
So I'll let Chris introduce himself and give you his background. That'll be a good trial run for him.
Tough crowd. Go ahead, Chris.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Christopher Ledoux. Some of you may or may not know who I am. I was working part-time in Berlin for just over a year now prior to going full-time with the department. I did just complete the 23-week academy, so now I'm back for good. I'm actually working tonight, so I'll be there in a couple of hours. I started part-time in Princeton, Mass. in April of 2021, and then got a call from Chief Shartner asking if I was still interested in coming to Berlin. I actually did an internship in 2017 with Chief Shartner when he was a sergeant. So I've had a little bit of connections with the department and know everyone in the department fairly well. But yeah, that's pretty much me. I'm excited to be back and happy to be back out on the road and working for Berlin again.
Who was that handsome little guy in the picture?
That's my son, Logan. He's 2. He's currently trapped in his bedroom with my wife right now because he wouldn't stop climbing all over trying to hide everyone on the screen, even though they couldn't see him.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah. And that's my wife and my mother during our pinning ceremony. So
very nice.
Great.
Congratulations.
Well, congratulations. Welcome back in some respects. I think we're quite happy to have you, and I think it's a great town to work for here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It is. I'm excited to be back.
I think Christopher enjoys his new role. He's enjoying his new role better than being my intern.
Yeah.
Definitely did. Definitely did.
Well, with the storm this weekend, who knows? We're going to see around Ways Wise this week.
I'll be here all week and weekend, so I love my overtime.
Well, good. Good to meet you. Good to see you.
You as well. Thank you.
Thanks.
Welcome back, Chris.
Thank you.
Chris, Peg, any formal questions?
I'll go last. Derek always knows I have questions for him. He waits.
Chris?
No, I don't have anything right now.
So Chief Shatner, I know you said that the ACO reports will show up in February. Could you give a status on training? The ACO, I know that there were state issues, so wondering what's going on with that. And then obviously, I'm almost anticipating that her reports will show up in all the standard required by the state templates on February, or for your next report. So are you moving towards that with her?
Yeah, I've made a complete book, binder with all the forms attached inside. The training actually doesn't go annually January 1st to December 31st. It actually goes out to January 31st. But I've been January 30th. Been in communications with the state director and watching the training.
And how are you staff-wise with Officer Ledoux? Are you good? Are you still short minus the officer who's out? But are we still looking to plug holes?
We're still plugging a lot of holes. We lost another officer IOD until at least the 16th of January. So we're back down 2 again. But like Chris says, he likes to work and he's been signing up for a lot of extra shifts and plugging holes along with everybody else in the department.
And for those in the audience, I learned last time Chief said IOD, injured on duty. How did I do?
Thanks.
Well, I mean, we do have a tendency to get acronym happy, and usually it's after the meeting, I'll get a text and be like, what was that? And I'm like, what? So I'd just rather get it out of the way now.
Yep.
Cool. Right.
Do you have other questions, Peg?
No, I'm taking it easy on Eric tonight.
Nice. See?
Nice.
Easy night for you, Chief.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then thanks. Hopefully the injured will heal up quickly and full recovery, because it's always sad no one wants to be injured on duty. So, I'm sure they're all getting a little stir crazy themselves to come back.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of people, think it's actually worse to be home than it is to be at work.
Yep.
I mean, you get bored.
Right.
So
we also don't want them back before they're ready too, because coming back before you're ready also means you injure yourself again and can injure yourself further too. So.
Yep, absolutely.
Well, great. Thanks for coming tonight and the presentation, and we will talk to you again soon, I am sure.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks. I think that will bring us back to what would normally be the start of our agenda, the approval of minutes for December 19th and December 27th.
I'll make a motion to approve December 19th and December 27th minutes.
Seconded.
Great. I think we're ready to vote. Then Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone, aye.
Is there any correspondence, Kristen, worthy of discussion tonight?
Other than my ruse to get the fire chief here this evening, that is all I had under specific correspondence. It was relatively quiet over the holidays, but I hope everybody had wonderful holidays and a happy new year.
Thanks. General public comments. So if there's someone in the audience who would like to make a general comment, you can raise your hand. And then while we're seeing if there's any of those, Kristen will queue you up for your town administrator report. And you could potentially jump in, and if I see a hand, we'll find a stopping point to recognize them for a quick comment.
Okay, as I started to mention, we did have a little bit of quiet lull between Christmas and New Year's. So it took a lot of time on the budget. I do have a number of recommended budgets before you this evening to vote. We also met with the Personnel Committee last week. They did make a recommendation on merit/market increases subject to available funds. And those are before you as well tonight. FinCom met last week and went over police, animal control, communications, and library budgets. They have previously done fire and EMS and a very preliminary look at the schools. They also approved a reserve fund transfer for $11,800 for select board consulting to cover overages from the fire chief recruitment. And we do have a number of key upcoming dates in our annual calendar. We're going to be asking you to open the warrant this evening for the Maytown meeting, believe it or not. Annual reports are due January 31st. We'd ask that the Maytown warrant be closed February 13th. And we'd also like to schedule a FinCom joint meeting with the select board on the 13th of February as well. We have 2 new department heads that will be starting next month. Our new fire chief, Mike McQuillan, will start on February 1st. The first month he will work somewhat of a part-time schedule, not quite full-time, as he transitions out of his current position up in New Hampshire. And we have a new treasurer collector, Paul Redmond. He is starting February 3rd, but he is spending the week before in training with Dennis Fairbay before he retires. Had a number of meetings this past month. Lot of, budget meetings, of course, were a big part of what was going on. Sorry, I'm trying to read this on my screen and look at the computer. We were able to get the police retro paid out in accordance with the new MOA. I was able to lock in the air handler at the $123,000 price. It was slated to go up January 1st. Unfortunately, it does have a 26 to 30 week lead time just for ordering the air handler itself. And then it's another 4 to 6 weeks to schedule install from there. But that is in the works. So we're moving on that. That should also give us some time to try and get the roof IFB quote out and get the roof work scheduled. However, I did speak with the air handler company. They can put it in before or after. Either way, it will work. And there were only some very, very small holes that have been patched that were identified in the roof to date. So we're going to just have to kind of see how that timing works out between the roof and the air handler and which one kind of has to go in first, because if we want to wait on the air handler, we may have to find a place to store it. So that's a little bit up in the air there. We do have insurance items for the Bullard House, historical items that were relocated over to Village Power. We have posted a 10-hour-week highway administrative assistant position that was budgeted in the FY23 budget. And we received already an application from somebody who has municipal experience, which is very exciting. I'm hoping to do an interview later on this week with the highway superintendent. And I'm very excited to report that we completed work on the personnel policy manual, and the personnel committee recommended forwarding it to the select board for review. It's on your agenda this evening. Peg is actually working on a project with Acrobat for signage at the town hall, which has been one of my kind of day one things that I walked in and said, I'd love to see a little more signage, because people kind of wander around going like this and don't seem to sort of know exactly where to go. So we're kind of looking into Assabet. There was already some work done when Margaret was here. We reconnected up with them, and they're going to be putting together some designs for us. And talked to Tim Wheeler about an opportunity with CMRPC for a housing coordinator. They received a grant for a regional housing coordinator, and it would be using grant funds / CPA funds. And that could be potentially beneficial in moving forward with some of the housing work that the planning board and CPA plan to do. And that's all I have for you for right now.
Great. If I could start, just there's a bunch of procurements out there that are being worked on, correct?
There are. So I did press pause while I was kind of putting together the bulk of the budget, but what I have on my list right now is the audit RFP needs to go out, along with the cable camera RFP, highway materials IFB, roof bid, recreation courts, and I think those are the 5 main ones that I'm working on right now. Audit, cable, highway, roof, and recreation. And there are others, but those are the ones that have kind of floated to the top.
Chris, do you have questions?
No, sounds like you've been very busy.
Yeah. Took good advantage of a slower week. Peg.
Kristen, I don't know if you know this, maybe you do. There was some discussion a few weeks ago about a follow-up on the weather stripping for the doors at the highway barn. And since it's getting cold, and I'm sure electric costs are just going out the door every time they open it, is there any follow-up on that to whether it's done? Will it be done? Or is that a Fred question to wait for when he shows up?
I did get an email about that, and I was just searching to see. So, it looks like Cornell has agreed to offer the weather stripping brushes free of charge with a little pressure from Fred. And Pizzuco has been brought in because they were the GC on the project. They are reaching out to Worcester Overhead Door to see if they will do the install. It's not known if there will be a charge. If there is, obviously we have the funding, but Fred is actually going the route of trying to save us money first by speaking with the general contractor on the project and trying to get them to complete that work. So I will get an update from him. That was the last that I heard of it.
Yeah, that was the last that I saw in the email. I just didn't know what was done after that.
Let me check and I'll let you know.
Okay. That's all I had.
Great. You mentioned in your report a bunch of things upcoming on the agenda, and so I think we can start pondering away. The next thing on the agenda is the fiscal year 22, fiscal year 24 budget. Just jumping back in time.
Okay, great. What I'd like to do is I'd like to share my screen. And if you go into the drive, the document that I'm going to pull up, if I can get to it myself here, is...
And the things in yellow are what we're going to just talk about tonight?
Correct. So it's the FY24 budget V1 for version 1, dated 1/9/23. And I wouldn't put too much stock in the first 2 pages at this point because those are very preliminary numbers and I have a lot of holes in some of the numbers still that need to be figured out, particularly with regard to school numbers. So this is really just a basic rundown. If you go down to page 3, and I'm going to share my screen with you. That is very small. Hold on. I'll make that bigger. Okay. Let me see. Is that any better to see?
So it's going to be based on what monitors we're using.
Yeah, I'm just seeing a black screen, Kristen.
It was there for a moment. It's back to a single white line in the center of a black screen.
Oh, that's strange. Okay. Give me just a minute.
It was there for a moment.
All right, let me try to stop it and share it again. Somehow it went to, it looks like it went to something called Whiteboard. I don't know how I did that. Okay.
There we go.
All right, so where we're at this evening and what I put together for you that starts here on page 3, you have in the first budget column, the FY23 town meeting approved budget. The next column over is the FY24 department requested budget. Then you have the dollar change between the two. I've included any supplemental requests that the departments put in. And then what we're looking at are just, as you mentioned, Scott, the highlighted ones. Those are the ones that I would be recommending at this point that I have reviewed, approved, and I'm comfortable moving forward with those numbers. And the very last column would be any dollar change that I have made over and above or below the department request. So sorry, go ahead.
Say the column that where if we were to support anything tonight, it's going to be the column that's titled FY24 TA.
That's correct. The bolded, italicized FY24 TA column would be the one that you're looking at. So the first 10 are very basic. Moderators level funded. Select board is exactly as you recommended it when we spoke before you already. Town administrator, I am requesting one supplemental request for $550. That's for one Adobe license for myself. Finding it very time consuming to scan and upload documents and try to piece them together. It would be much easier to have one Adobe license. It's a one-time charge. So I'm asking for that in a supplemental budget for the office. That way.
the annual charges for those Adobe licenses these
You can
days?
actually still buy a one-time license on Amazon for $550. So I did check with our IT folks on that.
Line 6, the math is escaping me. 5,000 was requested in 23, 8,508 is for 24. That's the change. But you have 12,800 in a supplemental request, but that still is the same.
Oh, I'm sorry. You are correct. That is a typo. So it should be so the $12,000 there, when we discussed it, the board did not approve any of the supplemental requests.
Okay.
So what I did was keep it at where it was.
Okay.
I struggled as to where to put that supplemental request column because it's a little bit of an anomaly. There's also a spreadsheet at the end that has all the supplemental requests summarized as well. That's a little bit easier to look at. So the select board budget does not include the supplementals. It's just as you voted it at your last meeting that we spoke of the budget.
So it means it does not include the additional procurement support training for Mary.
That is correct. I would be happy to add that. It was requested, but the board did not take any votes on the supplemental, so I did not include that.
What was that amount?
That amount is, I believe, I'm going to scroll down to the last
$1,333.
Yep, thank you.
And explain again what benefits the town gets out of having Mary trained.
So we have a tremendous amount of procurements going on. I mean, I think I've inherited somewhere between 8 and 10, and we really, I have to say, to be compliant with state procurement laws and not have audit findings, we really need to assist the other departments that don't do procurement or understand the regulations on a regular basis. It's becoming really onerous to try to manage all of that within one office, and to be able to have somebody who could help me with that process would be quite beneficial.
Was there someone who was going to do it from CPAC?
Yes. I think Maureen Adema was potentially going to be trained. I would need to follow up on that to see, where the status of that lies.
Okay.
And I can do that.
Because there was the ability to hire someone to help administer, particularly procurement for capital planning and what am I, CPAC?
Oh, community preservation.
Yeah. If there was things from that needed procurement, that might be a help.
I would definitely say they don't have as many projects come through as we collectively get, but yes, having somebody else trained, if they do have the time within their budget and I'm able to access that, would be helpful.
And, and I don't have any objection to Mary helping out with procurement either. But I just wanted to ask the question.
Sure.
I think I'm fine with the 8,508 for the expenses, and just thinking that maybe some of the other things we did, because we're already asking for some increase in that budget, that we try to see if we can find a way to do that training within the budget without adding anything more to it, between reserve funds and expenses, and maybe being better on counseling, we could do an inner line transfer later on. So I'll be fine with keeping it 8,508, even though I really would like to get you the support in being able to get those procurements out the door.
Okay.
Sorry, I cut you off as you went through. You're still going through. So town administrator 7, 8, 9, 10.
Right. Town administrator has a reduction in the budget that actually reflects my FY24 salary, which is less. So there's some savings there. Did ask for the $550. FinCom would like $5 more. I felt like we were on the Price is Right. And we did talk about the reserve fund. So we only have $28,500 left in the reserve fund right now. It has been a rough year. My concern, and FinCom expressed this very eloquently, due to COVID, there's been a lot of things that departments have been putting off doing, and those are coming home to roost. And the longer we put off, deferred maintenance and put off preventative maintenance, that creates bigger problems. their concern was that perhaps in 24, some of those things may start to materialize and it may put more strain on the reserve fund. The hope is that that's not the case, but we also are taking inflation into account and the fact that we are now halfway through the fiscal year and have exhausted almost 3/4 of the reserve fund. They asked for an extra $15,000. So that's lines 1 through 10. I thought maybe if we take them in chunks that way, if anyone has questions on those first lines.
It's been like 95,000 for a really long time, hasn't it, Scott?
I think it has.
See, I'm feeling old because I remember when there was debate to raise it from 50 to 65,000, but.
Oh, well, I wasn't around that long.
But no, those are, and one of the things is that some of would rather reserve fund than every budget be as fat as they think they need so that they can all cover their, what if something goes wrong, because something will go wrong somewhere. But if every department budgets for things to go wrong, then we have all this extra money that we are asking for or not. So here's a better place to put some of those.
Right.
And so I will be fine with one, at least at this point, being around with 110. I mean, when we get to the end of the day, we've done all of these. If we've asked for way too much more money, I will likely come back. I'm sure FinCom will also try to go back and try to cut some of these. And so as we sit right now, at least for me, lines 1 through 10 are fine.
Me too.
Peg?
I'm fine.
Yep. So 15 to the rest of the page, at least what's in yellow.
Okay. So the audit, I am actually putting out an RFP in hopes that we can actually get the audit for cheaper than this. I haven't put an audit RFP out in many years, but I think that the audit is expensive, to be honest, for the size of our budget. So we did do a 2.5% increase on it. I think at this point, I know it's only $650, but I say level fund it and see what comes in from the audit RFP. No sense, I don't think, in this point in upping it arbitrarily. The reval, spoke with Molly. This is literally based on the cost that she received from the consultants. There is a $2,600 increase in the cost of doing business for that. Treasurer collector. So actually met with Dennis today and we went through everything here. We do have the salary that reflects the new treasurer collector, the part-time wage with their 2.5% increase, the $1,000 incentive, and then there is an increase on expenses, and that comes primarily from let's see, there's an increase in Kelly Ryan deputy collector fees that were not budgeted in FY23 that are already costing $2,500 for the first half of FY23. So that's basically upping the cost there, along with a new contract for Odyssey that they are a company that would work with us on the GASB retiree health insurance should we decide to move in that direction. So that's been included in the budget. There's also an increase for postage, which has been going up substantially as well. And basically, when you combine those numbers, I actually added in another $6,500 because the deputy collector fees, which Margaret instituted Kelly and Ryan as the deputy collector in dealing with the delinquent bills, that wasn't budgeted for in 23, but it looks like it's going to be about 9,000. So Dennis had budgeted for 2,500. I don't think it makes sense to under budget that and have to do a reserve fund transfer when we have 6 months of data that are already showing it at 4,500. So that is why you see a $6,500 increase in that line item there. Legal budget.
And so that company helps us collect or helps collect money. This is unpaid taxes, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
And so from what I understand, that was instituted, it was a recommendation of the state audit that came down. So it was something that Margaret wanted to put in right away, which is completely understandable. Now we need to budget for it.
Right. Because what the budget doesn't show is if we don't have a service doing that, there's money that we don't collect that doesn't come in revenue. So it's hard for people to sometimes see the increase, the added money because of that, because they only get money if they actually collect something, correct? Because it's a finder's fee, you said.
That one I'd have to check on, because I believe that they get money as they collect out. So because there's fees that they get charged. And I mean, ultimately folks do have to pay because it'll get a ding on their RMV record and they're not able to register for anything.
Right.
But there is an offset in bringing in funds, you know, as well. So, and pretty much everybody uses Kelly Ryan as a deputy collector. In my experience, that's something that's very common across the board. So. And June, thank you, June. She just confirmed to me, yes, they only get paid if we get paid. Thank you, June. Gotta love June, always has my back. So legal budget. We expended $50,000 already of the legal budget through November of 23. We had to go ask for a $50,000 reserve fund transfer because we're projecting about 100,000, if not more. There's just a lot going on. I'm hoping that a number of those items are being settled within 23, so we won't have to increase that much. However, this is one of the reasons that the reserve fund is so low so early on in the year and making FinCom so understandably nervous. So I'm recommending a $25,000 increase there. Legal is really tough. It's a moving target. It just depends on what comes up throughout the year. As I mentioned to FinCom, I try to use them very sparingly. But you know, there are things, arbitration, legal matters that come up that need to be dealt with. Personnel is the same, level funded at $250. That pays for the fee for the MMHR, the subscription to the state Mass Municipal Human Resource Association. Tax titles have increased due to COVID. And Dennis is estimating an additional $5,000 is needed for tax title services. You know, it's an unfortunate thing, and we try to work it out with folks before anything, you know, becomes final. But there is a lot going on with regard to tax title activity at this time. And then data systems, I've got great news to report. Our Gmails were going up from $12 a email to $18 an email per month, and Travis at CM Geeks was able to negotiate that down to $13. So there is just a modest increase that you see here for that, as well as the website Virtual Towns and Schools has a small increase, and I'm budgeting for the Zoom accounts that were previously paid for out of COVID CARES funding that I'm now putting in the IT budget. So that is lines 15 and then 20 to 28.
Chris and Peg, do you have other questions on those?
Nope.
Okay, jump to 37.
Can I ask a question about the next one though, town clerk, even though it's not in yellow?
Sure. I
know that we had, as a board, we were concerned that about the salary for the town clerk. And had it been reviewed by personnel? This was probably when Margaret was with us.
So I can check. I can tell you that she did some of her own research as part of her budget process and looked at what part-time town clerks were making around the area. I would like to check with personnel. To me, I still feel that the salary is on the low side. And I'm concerned that that the number of hours she's putting in far exceed what she's actually getting paid for. And I did have that conversation. I think, you know, it's a service that she provides. She's very dedicated to her position and, you know, does not want to charge the taxpayers, which I completely understand. The issue we're going to have down the line is someday when Eloise decides to retire, we are probably going to bring somebody in who may not be as generous with their time. And I think it's important for us to start looking at, what the actual cost of doing business is within that. So I will certainly bring that and check with personnel and talk with June and see if anything happened before I came on board, and just kind of do a little research on that.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I mean, if we're going to have to raise the salary eventually, it might be in Eloise's advantage for her at this point. And I think she deserves it. She works very hard.
Very hard. She's here all the time.
Mhm.
I sit right next to her, so I know. All right. Anything else on that, or do you want me to move on to 37 through 45?
Good. Yep.
Okay. So the Conservation Commission put in a supplemental request for an additional 4 hours of staff time. Their conservation agent currently has 8 hours. In order for her to do trainings, some additional field work, and filing decisions and regulatory matters, they are requesting an additional 4 hours per week. That is a supplemental cost. I do feel that it's justifiable given my experience of what a conservation agent takes. I don't think 12 hours a week is an unreasonable amount of time. I think that it's difficult to get done what you need to get done in 8 hours, and especially getting somebody up to speed if there's training involved. So I did make the recommendation to increase the hours at that cost of $6,220 for the additional 4 hours for the agent. The expenses remained the same. And then planning board level funded at $1,000, ZBA level funded at $500. Agricultural Commission would like $25 more to go up to $1,375. And we asked for an additional $85 for the town report, which is just a 2.5% increase to cover additional inflationary costs.
Okay.
So Kristen, I have questions on the conservation one. Perhaps I'm misremembering it. It's quite possible. But I thought when we hired the conservation agent that the town was going to provide the money for the first year, and then after that, that it was going to be coming out of Concom budget. So with the budget items that they have and the couple sources of funding, this is not possible to come out of their money to pay for their conservation agent?
Are you talking about like NOI fees or?
No. So they have, they have a couple, banks of fundage that they use for various items. So I'm just asking why the money for additional hours for the conservation agent is not coming out of those funds and why it's coming to the town to request more money.
Okay, I can certainly have that conversation with Carolyn. We can hold that one if you'd like. I've typically seen wages for conservation agents come out of the general fund, but if that was a decision or something that was discussed about, I wasn't aware. So I'd be happy to have that conversation and get some more information.
Yeah, I mean, I don't disagree. Maddie does great things. I go to the ConCon meetings, I see her, and she's involved in a lot, but I just want to be sure that whatever agreement had passed where it would now be the responsibility of ConCom, that they were actually going to use their money and not come to the town for an increase.
Okay. Anything else on that set of lines, 37 to 41 and 45?
Well, I know we beat it to a dead horse, but the town report, so we're printing less hardcover books and looking at a different way of using some type of binding that escapes me. And given the amount of boxes that I've seen in town reports that were printed but just aren't used, why is there an increase in the line item when we should be printing less and moving towards a less expensive cost for the town report?
So we're not sure if the not perfect bound is less expensive. I don't have a cost at this point. We're looking at Assabet to see if they can actually produce the reports. And that's something we've had preliminary conversations with. If it's something that they can't do, The only reason we did that increase is because, like everything else, the cost of ink, paper, everything has gone up. But I agree. And Mary and I had the conversation about not producing as many books because you don't need to have them hanging around. So that's something we would keep in mind as we move forward with getting prices on that.
Okay.
Yep. 157 to whatever, we could stop somewhere on that page.
All right. Let's do 57 to 62. These are pretty straightforward. Plumbing and gas inspector expenses, level funded at 300, electrical level funded at 600 for the inspector. Animal inspector gets the 2.5 cost of living increase on the stipend. Expenses remain the same. Same with animal control. There was a request for 2.5% on the expenses for animal control. I didn't have a justification with it. It's only $46. It doesn't really, I don't think matter much one way or the other. But I did keep it the way the animal inspector was, and level funded the expenses, but did increase the cost of living for the salary.
I mean, I don't want to be nitpicky and come across as a crank, and $52 and $46 and truly are. I mean, $46 really is a nominal amount, but if we're asking other departments to explain why they're going up, then just to make sure it's fair, so no one can say so-and-so like so-and-so and didn't ask, if we could just have the paperwork, that would be great.
Yep.
Doesn't, we pay mileage to the animal control officer, correct?
I don't believe that we do
so.
right now because she's local. I think that's something we would need to do should that ever become not local.
Yeah, I don't think we do.
June says no.
Other questions from 57 to 62?
Nope.
Okay. And then let's see, actually we'll do 72 streetlights. We just did an increase of the 2.5%. Again, given inflationary costs. The cemetery commission, I reviewed their budget. They asked for an overall increase of 2.5%, given some rising costs for some of the materials that they need. Didn't see anything unreasonable there. Board of Health was your cost of living increase. Along the cost of living increase, for the salary and the part-time wages, level funded for the expenses at 1,000. And Neshoba Health and Neshoba Nursing each had a 5% increase. That is a fixed fee that comes from the Regional Public Health Alliance. And let's see, we can do that chunk, I think.
I sometimes feel that streetlights, do we have actuals? Is that number based on, because I don't want it to go up just because it's 2.5%. I want us to see the bills because we did put a bunch of LED lights in at some point, and we are negotiating decent electric rates, whether or not that 2.5 is really needed.
Yep. So I have, oh, sorry, I can't switch to it because then it's going to switch off of this. But yes, that is based upon actuals that they have within the year, and the idea that the electricity could go up a small amount. If you prefer we level fund it, I mean, we could do that as well if you like.
I'll be okay.
Anything else on this?
What are the salaries for the Board of Health members?
So that's the stipends for the elected and the part-time admin that they have.
Oh, and the part-time. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't say that clearly.
The Board of Health is 76.
Right. Okay. All right. And then let's see. I'll do the rest on this page. The veterans are asking for the 2.5% COLA and an extra $50 so they can buy a print cartridge. They run low on print cartridges throughout the year. community social services, this is the WHEAT money that moves forward, asking for level funding again this year, as that has not gone up. Library presented their budget to the FinCom last Wednesday. The 3485 represents that 2.5% increase, and the increase in expenses is for books, and there's a small increase in one other line item, postage. And basically they have to increase their books every year to meet their state minimum requirements. So nothing overly exciting there. Cultural council.
Kristen, where's the director's salary? Given that Bob is leaving, is that an us decision? Is that, where is that? Or is that included? I can't think that it's included in the wages part-time.
I don't know why that says wages part-time. That is strange. It is.
Well, I think he only is
part-time.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right, because he's only at what, 33 hours, I believe. So that's considered part-time.
Yep.
Part-time benefit.
So is there any consideration, as we've seen in all the other cases for people getting hired, that there's a significant increase? Are they accounting for that, or are they waiting until the end of the year? I just, I don't want them to come back and say, sorry, Bob's salary is $10, somebody else will take it, but only for 45, and then we're stuck.
No, it's a really valid point. I know that this is very recent that Bob had announced his retirement. I think it's worthwhile to have a conversation with Bob and Lynette and see perhaps they can pull some comps, and I can assist too from MMA with what library director salaries currently are.
I think Bob had a couple of pretty good increases in the last couple of years. I mean, I don't know where he is as far as comps, though.
Well, yeah. Bob had a couple good increases because unfortunately, I think Bob was whacked for a couple of years too, where money needed to come out, and he stepped aside and said, "No, I don't want my increase." So, they did him right later on. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, do we want to hold on that one maybe till we get some more information?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure.
So we're holding so far.
Console.
And 37, 38, 62, and 89 is what the ones on my list.
I think there was only two lines.
It's salary and expenses within Concom and library. So it's 4 lines, but 2 departments, right?
Yeah, just 2 lines, one in each area.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Right. But I thought we also were holding 62 for the explanation of the $46
the
increase.
46, yep.
Oh, okay, yep. 40.
Yep. So 37, 62, and 89 at this point.
What is it, 62 and 59?
89.
Playing bingo.
37, 62.
You got all that, Kristen?
I got 37, 62,
89.
and 89. Got it.
But what about
when we make the motion? When we make a motion, we'll include the lines that were.
But there was another one above the animal control officer and then the animal inspector. Both of those you wanted an explanation for, didn't you, for their expenses, Peg?
No, well, the expenses are flat for animal inspector. It was the $46 nominal at best that for the animal control officer.
Okay, I was looking at the salary. Never mind.
Yeah, no, so just 62.
All right.
I've been trying to keep notes.
Let's see. And then we have cultural council level at 1,500, historic level at 615. I'm sorry, excuse me. They asked for $15 more. And they did attribute that to the price of materials going up. Memorial Day 2,000 and level funded and festive events level funded at 5.
Who's in charge of Memorial Day expenses? Because we've gone 3 years without a Memorial Day parades or events.
That's so the veterans, wouldn't it be?
Well, it's been a volunteer group. The VFW group used to do it, but has not had the energy as of late. And so, I mean, although I'm questioning the line item from a fiscal standpoint, my question is, let's make sure there's someone in charge of making sure it happens, as opposed to I'd rather having it cut.
Well, also too, Scott, the Memorial Day expenses does that also include the flags that are purchased for all the cemeteries, for all the veterans?
It's flags and geraniums, and Roger Bradley leads that. They are, those graves are marked.
Okay. But I can
And same
certainly
for
check on
festive
the
events
parade.
expenses as well. Is there like someone in charge of making sure that those happen or are properly spent? As opposed to some random person saying, I had a festive event in town, reimburse me $50.
It's us.
Yeah,
Festive events hasn't
that's
been
us.
used in a couple of years now.
Yeah, that's a select board line item.
Right, and as Mary just said, hasn't been used in several years, has it?
No.
No, it hasn't. It came to light 6 years ago. George Pendergast, the late George Pendergast, asked for that money. It was strictly originally meant for mailing out townwide mailers about Home Day and Christmas time in Berlin committees, neither of which exist anymore.
I would, because select board expenses are still select board expenses. And if we control this line item, why don't we just zero this one out? And if they come back, we'll just pay for it out of the select board expense line.
Okay.
Because festive event committees or home day committees, when they spring up, start spending a lot, and it doesn't really directly to the select board's operations. I mean, it could be quasi recreation committee, it could be quasi any other thing, but it's your call, but.
I think wasn't part of that too a few years ago where they were lighting the tree over at the church. That there was money
that used
towards
that used to be buried in police, I think, or fire. I forget. It wasn't always.
Right, but any expenditure out of that requires select board approval. There's no sort of committee or group in charge of organizing it. It doesn't strike me as an independent expense. It strikes me as something the select board does every now and then to support things happening in town.
Is it just for mailing, Mary?
Well, it can go for wherever we want it to go to.
Its original intent was just to send mailers townwide, which we haven't done in years. The postage is up, the copying costs are up. And we would do that through bulk mail permit number 3. Well, we used to have rampant requests for the use of bulk mail permit number 3, and all of that's fallen away now because it's just not even effective. When you go down the post office, you see them all in the trash cans. That's just the people fitting out their post office box. So now we use Facebook, the Blinky sign. It seems to be more effective ways to get the word out about events when they happen than sending a townwide mailer. It would be very unusual to have a townwide mailer paid for by the town for an event.
You want to just think on this one, Scott, and we'll take it up at the next one meeting?
Sure.
So we'll just hold on that one.
Yep, adding it to the list.
Perfect. That's 95. Okay. Debt and interest is pretty straightforward. The principal 190 is the same as last year, but the interest actually goes down by $7,600. So I don't think, hopefully, anyone will complain about that one. And that's the rest of this page.
Right. The town as a whole does equal principal payment for our loans and bonds. So we do this. So the biggest payment is year one, and every year it goes down a little bit because you pay that set amount of interest in, and then that's the amount of principal and a little bit of interest, unlike a mortgage payment that we all have that's the same every year. Those first several years are almost all interest. And so it's a good thing, I think, the town does.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then the last section here, there does include line 99 at the top, which is also good news. We did reach out to the Assabet Regional Housing Consortium, and basically we haven't been using most of the funding that we've allocated for the past couple of years. So we got an estimate from Stephanie Peterson, and really, given our usage combined with a potential small increase, she said that $7,000 would be sufficient. We can cut that budget by $5,000 based on our usage. So I was pretty happy to hear that. Next line I'm not so happy about, which is Worcester Regional, which has gone up $58,729. And unfortunately, that is a fixed cost. There is nothing we can do about it. That is an assessment. But workers' comp is level funded. That's the Maya agreement that the select board voted to sign to keep us level funded for this year and no more than 2.5% in 25. Unemployment insurance, based on some claims that have come in recently and averaged out per month, we're estimating the need for an additional $10,000 in unemployment. And again, that's a tricky one. That's a moving target as well, because you never know when folks are coming on and off unemployment. So we give our best estimate based on the data that we have over a few months. Police and fire, what I did was I included a 5%. We don't have final numbers on that one yet, but we were told by the insurance company that should be a reasonable amount to assume, and hopefully would be less than 5%. That is for injured on duty for police and fire. So that's different than workers' comp for the rest of the town. Sick pay is an increase of $995 based on the budget allocations. And Medicare has gone up to $48,000, and property and liability, even though the actual premium is the same, we did bring that budget up slightly due to the increase in every time we bring a vehicle online, we have to pay an additional cost for insurance. And so what happens is we really have to make sure that we're allocating for those additional vehicles, because even though you bring one online, the theory is you take one off. The one that you had before is likely a 5-year-old vehicle that doesn't cost hardly anything. And every time you bring one on, it's like a $1,200 to $1,500 charge for bringing on new vehicles. So that's why we did allocate the 2.5% increase there. And then the last one is the step increases that I want to speak to you about a little bit more in detail, but I figured I'd ask first if you had any questions on those other lines.
Unemployment comp is people who we let go for cause, correct? Not people who have quit.
Not always. It depends on what they qualify for. There's different reasons that they could qualify for it. If they left for a serious medical reason, if they were laid off, if they were terminated, what have you. There's a number of different reasons they'll qualify.
And officially, the way the rules work is that they could quit us, go to another job, get fired from that job, and because we're an employer in the last 18 months, we're still on the hook for it a little bit.
Correct. If we're the primary employer in terms of their amount of salary that they've received in that time frame.
But then we did have a few years ago, we had an employee on highway who was injured on duty, and he was unable to work for a period of time. So I think that covered him.
And then Worcester Regional Retirement. When I see Worcester Retirement, it's what I fear about OPEB, by the way, is that these, like, you have no control over it, 10 and 15% increases every year. I mean, this has gone up obscene amounts every year since I started sitting on FinCom. I don't know of any year where that has been less than a 10% increase.
Well, that unfortunately has nothing to do with the number of employees like health insurance does. That, and I had a long conversation with Dennis about this, that has to unfortunately do with some very bad investments that they made. And it's really not clearing up until about 2037.
And they've said that for 20 years. For 12 years, it's always 10 years from now, we'll be caught up and we'll stop doing these increases. And it is always 10 years in the future. And every year the goalposts get moved out. We're loosey with the ball. But I can tell you, if we were a 401k, 403b environment and not defined pension, this number is, something we would control.
Absolutely. And the pension system does pay out a lot more than Social Security. And so unfortunately they have us there. That's the challenge. They can charge us what they feel they need to balance their investments.
And there's not another vendor we can go with. We're stuck with that vendor.
Right, we are in Worcester County. We are not in a city like Worcester, which has its own retirement system. So we're really not equipped to do that. So we are stuck with Worcester Regional.
So sadly, for the entire night, I mean, that 158,000 is, you know, a third of everything that we've talked about increasing tonight is that one line that we have no control over.
Correct. Well, oh yeah, for increases, yeah.
Right. Other folks have questions about this last section of yellow? Do you want to do a motion for the yellow and then take the proposed step increases its own sort of discussion? Because you have charts for that as well.
I do, and I actually wanted to ask, I wasn't sure how you folks usually handle that. You know, if you go through the chart or if you vote it all as one, or how that's typically handled.
So was this particular item in the Google Drive since Friday?
Which one?
The one we're looking at. Because I did not see it in there over the weekend.
No, and I do apologize. I had some of the numbers in there, but I was working all weekend on it. So.
Okay, just next time, could you just send it to us by email and put it in the Google Drive?
Yep,
Yeah,
I can do that.
If it's not there by Friday, a reminder, this wasn't there Friday. I happened to only look today to read a bunch of things today.
Yeah, I read stuff over the weekend and then I thought I was good. And so
okay. My apologies. I will certainly do that.
Only one I saw was the step increase, one document that was in there on Friday or by Friday, I should say. I just don't want to be neglect in not looking at something that we're going to talk about.
Sure.
I think for proposed step increases, normally a lot of those are in their individual budgets and are done there. And so I think even if after we're done this, we do those, I would encourage you to sort of reallocate that $8,400 back into the line items they belong into.
Correct. And that's why they're just out as a lump sum right now.
Yep. And so is there more discussion? Is there a sort of tentative motion? Because again, we won't finalize the numbers until we see all the numbers. There are other large numbers out there. This is only what 15% or so of the budget, although it's a lot of line items. And so is there a tentative approval except for 37, 62, 89, and 95, those in yellow?
Are you asking for motion?
Yes.
I would make a motion with the exception of the ones that we have. Is that the ones you just listed?
Yep. 37, okay. 62, 89, and 95.
Okay, with the exception of those.
Second.
I think we're ready for a vote then. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Now, before I say anything, this does not include the proposed increases because I have multiple questions.
It does not include that last time. We're about to discuss those separately.
Okay, then I'm a yep. Stone eye.
Okay. Let's work on the proposed step increases then.
Okay.
I was trying to figure out the difference between the two documents.
So there was one more employee. We had an employee evaluations that were incomplete due to some employees that had been out on medical leave. So I did actually just receive one of them with a recommended merit increase today. So that was the final set that I had been waiting for, and it did come through with a recommended increase. It is from another elected board. So I did say I would ask the question.
Right.
All right. So how do you folks usually do? Do you go by position? Do you go down the line? Do you vote it collectively? I mean, I feel a little odd kind of throwing everything up on the screen, but.
Right.
Well, if there's anybody who has an issue, why don't we just talk about those?
Okay.
For the most part, this is looking like to me, these are step increases, nothing beyond step increases.
Correct. So
this the salaried people.
Exactly. So this is step increases primarily for the administrative staff. Had a lengthy conversation with personnel, actually over several meetings, about the fact that they had concerns that the the hourly pay for some of the non-managerial staff positions were quite low. And it's something that they had looked at over time. They had brought some up to what they felt was market rate. This is actually looking at merit increases that are based on the employee evaluations that were received. So all of the recommended increases received an exceeds expectation evaluation that had backup with it to justify and document each rating and review point with it.
And as I look at this, the ones that have step increases, they're all just one step. I'm not missing anyone who's going up a level or more than one step, correct?
No, it's all one step. And what I did for the salaried employees, because they are not on the salary schedule, which merits further discussion down the line, I'd like to have them on the salary schedule, but I figured out the amount between steps is 1.02%. So I increased their salary by 1.02% to be the same as
plus the cost of living, in addition to the cost of living, correct?
Correct.
So Kristen, some of these positions, and obviously I'm not going to name names, I'm going to assume that these people have been in their positions for over a year, and that we're not giving raises to people just because they're doing their job, that they truly are extraordinary, everyday policies, updates, they're making changes. It's not just because, hey, they're doing their job and they show up on time.
No, so at the time of their evaluation, all of these employees had been here for a year. One of the things personnel and I went back and forth on was, should they have had to be here a year effective June 30th? The problem with this is you're using FY22 recommendations to set an FY24 budget. So theoretically, an employee who's a rock star could go for 2 years before ever being eligible for a step increase. So we settled upon they have to have a full year to be reviewed upon, which all of these employees have. And they all have exceeds expectations with reasons for why they exceeded expectations, not just because they're coming in and doing their job.
And these are salary increases effective July 1. These are not going to affect the day we pass this, correct?
That is correct.
And then several of these people reports to other independent boards that are not us. Those boards have all signed off on these recommendations as well, so that we're sort of putting into a budget something that another board has requested.
Right. So these recommendations, so if the board hires the department head, that comes from the department head. If the employee works directly for the board, it comes from the board.
Right.
So the total budgetary impact of all combined would be $8,446.73. It is a one-step increase recommended for 10 employees.
Other questions, Chris and Peg? I've sort of asked a lot in this particular round.
So what, remind me again, the difference between the two documents?
9 people and 10 people.
Correct. The number 10th was added today.
Okay.
At the request of that board.
And so if you have 10 people on it, the bottom person on that list was requested by that board today, and that's why they're added to the list.
Correct. And I did let them know it was obviously late. I would try, but you know, that's being an elected board. I felt it appropriate to at least bring forward the request.
Okay.
They did have a reason for it because they did have a lengthy period of absence with the manager of that department.
So what is
the
choice of Peg and Scott? What are your choices as far as which document to approve?
I'm fine with the one with 10 people on it.
Okay.
I just have a hard time, you know, and it's not that I don't trust personnel. I just have a hard time, again, former background, that you know, you've got 10 people that are coming up for a raise, not to say that they don't deserve it, they do. You know, you've got a person in here too that is already getting additional hours and now an additional increase. It's just not sitting real well with me because there's tangible information that I cannot look at to say, yeah, I agree that this is extraordinary, you know, for that. So without that data, I can't.
I remember years where every employee got a step and COLA. And so the idea that not everyone is getting steps is a
it
change.
just wasn't broken out like this.
Right.
You know, so it's harder to say, wow, you know, look at that total, you know,
no, and
it's always
Scott, you know what, and Scott, I had issues with that too, with everybody getting a step and everybody getting a bump when there were no performance reviews done, or 4 was circled down the page and it was signed with no explanation. So I've had issues with this for years. This is not the first one, but if these are personnel's recommendations, then I will trust in them and abide by their feedback.
Right. And this is, and Kristen, these performance reviews do exist, because I remember we recently had an executive session when there was a disciplinary issue where someone said there was no performance review since 2016. And so I'd hate to think that at some point one of these people ends up, God forbid, on a disciplinary action and that we discover there's no performance reviews.
No. I have personally reviewed all of their performance reviews. I have them in hand. I made sure that there were comments that justified the ratings. It wasn't just a circle all the way down the line. There was a couple that I actually had further discussions with the department head about to make sure when there were some areas I was a little unclear about. I literally have them all in hand. It's a little tricky because I did check with legal counsel. Personnel wanted to review the reviews, and it's really not something that falls under their specific purview. That was the recommendation of legal counsel, was that, you know, I go through them, compile a list, discuss it with personnel, and go from
there. So I would make a motion to approve the document, the step increase document with the total of $8,058.81.
So you're removing the 10th person?
No, I thought that was the one with the 10th person.
With the 10th person, it's 844, 8,000.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Okay, yes.
Yep. And again, Chris, I apologize that, like I said, that was a last minute change from this morning that I didn't know was coming. So my apologies on that one. I'll email it out next time.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you could do both, but if you just email us in case we've already looked at the documents.
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Then I will make the motion.
Seconding that, Peg, if you were not.
Well, I was waiting till it was done. So yes, there's a second on the increase amount of $8,446.73.
You do have a hand raised in the audience.
Sure, Eloise.
I would like to bring up one thing about the evaluations. Like in my department, there's only the 2 of us. And if he didn't perform, he wouldn't work for us. And we have to be able to juggle stuff that is totally out of our normal reach. And you have to be, you know, nimble that way. And that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kristen, at some point, and personnel will probably shoot me for saying this, but at some point, could we potentially start to look at 360 reviews, where it's not only department head, supervisor, manager, whatever you want to call it, but the employee also does it. And if it is a position that supports other departments, that they also have it too, so you can see cumulative feedback from everybody, all done confidentially?
So there is a self-evaluation. The employee actually fills it out first, and then they discuss it with the department. But what was the last, you meant if they worked cross departments?
Correct.
So there are a couple of employees that do work for multiple departments, and I did have them, it's kind of weird, but I had them reviewed on both sides. by the person that supervises them on each aspect of their position.
So you're not asking them to write their own, you're asking them to review one that's already written?
So there's a section of the evaluation that's specific to the employee performance over the year. And we ask that the employee fill that section out to meet with their supervisor to start the conversation.
Yeah, but 360 is the employee actually doing it. So you give it to me and there's my questions and I circle that I'm a 4 and I list the reason why. And then I circle that I'm a 5 and I list the reason why. So you have employee input and then you have supervisor input. And then you kind of mix it, because if I think that I'm a 5 and a 4 and I'm a rock star and my boss thinks that I'm not a rock star, then there's a definite disconnect on the numbers. And that needs to be the discussion, not so much I'm going to sit down with my boss to talk about it.
Okay.
More discussion on the step increases, the 10 employees. I think we're ready to vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone, aye.
Okay, that's it for this evening on the budget.
It's tonight's budget. And just think, FinCom is way more into this and spends way more time on these, and this is just the beginning.
It is.
New business then. TA notice to intent to appoint a new part-time snow employee, snow and ice.
Thank you. This comes at the request of the highway superintendent looking to appoint Stephen Nadeau as a part-time seasonal plow driver.
And I would make a motion to appoint Stephen Nadeau as a part-time snow and ice under part-time snow and ice wages.
Second.
Great. I think we're ready to vote then. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone, aye.
Can I just ask a quick question? Do we have someone who, I know we had someone previously who is now not working for us any longer. Do we have somebody who's doing like sidewalk salt and that kind of thing for the municipal buildings?
I believe so, but let me confirm.
Yeah, you might want to just check with Fred.
Sure. So sidewalk salting municipal buildings?
Yeah, like the library, 1870, just maybe it's just one of the highway employees.
Yeah, Kristen, if you can get Chief Clark before he goes, I know that fire, before Fred got there or anybody from highway got there, that they would go out and snow blow and do sand. But the problem was if they didn't, and Fred, I'm using Fred as highway came through and swept through and got all the snow up. Then when fire would go out, they'd throw all the snow back in the driveway. So it kind of defeated efforts. So if there's something that can be done to say, if the town plow isn't there at 6 o'clock and you have staff, maybe get them outside. Because we've had a couple of years where people have fallen because of ice. So I'd like to make sure that it's, the Chief Clark's on top of it, and more so for a new chief when he comes in, that he looks at that he gets his staff out there to shovel and salt and sand.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Will do.
And as you said, alluded to earlier in the meeting, Kristen, we get to talk about the annual town meeting.
Yes.
It feels like it is far away, but the dates are upon us really quickly.
They are. So there is in your meeting packet just a memo. There's a copy of the calendar, and annual town meeting will be held on Monday, May 1st, 7:30 p.m. at Berlin Memorial. So what we're asking the board to do tonight is to open the warrant for this meeting and to set the closing date as Monday, February 13th at 12 noon.
So I would make a motion to open the May annual town meeting warrant and set the close date for February 13th.
Seconded.
Believe it or not, it is that time. And so let's vote on opening the warrant. That means, Christian, you're keeping the sort of list of things that come in, and we'll start looking at agenda items and orders probably starting in the next couple of weeks.
Right. I do have a running list already of things that were before, Margaret had and that I've been adding to. And what I will be doing in the next couple of days is sending out an email reminding department heads of this and asking them to get in at least their placeholder items for right now with the full descriptions by the 13th of February.
I think then we're ready to vote. Voting on opening the warrant. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone, aye.
Great. And then that night of the 13th, we'll have the joint meeting with FinCom as well to see where things are at and what can be done next so we can get everything out in time. And then the other thing you alluded to in your town administrator report is the discussion or presentation or starting presentation of the employee policy manual. It was what, 109 pages?
It is. I can honestly say I literally just carried this across the finish line. The bulk of this work was done by Margaret and June. They did a fantastic job. There were just a few policies that needed to be finished. It needed to be formatted and tweaked. Some things that were duplicative removed. I did incorporate the sections that were approved last summer. There were a couple of minor changes, non-substantive, except for FMLA. We went back and forth a couple times with personnel to make sure the FMLA section really reflected some of the concerns that they had about what type of leave to use and what order, or how much could be used when it comes to vacation leave, sick leave, when caring for a family member who is seriously ill. So we worked a lot on that. We worked on the technology policy, and we worked a fair bit on some of the other upfront portions, like basically the recruitment, selection, termination, just kind of reorganized everything. You know, we talked about an education and training stipend or payment rather that employees could submit potentially for reimbursement, subject to the department head and the town administrator's approval, and obviously subject to the availability of funds. But for training or education that's reimbursed, the employee could be asked to sign an agreement that says they have to stay with the town for a certain period of time, or they would need to reimburse the town for a portion of those funds or all of those funds, depending on how long they stay for. So personnel, June, Margaret did a tremendous amount of work. I'm pleased to say that it has been given the stamp of approval by personnel. I recognize that it is 109 pages and you probably haven't had time to read the whole thing, but I wanted to at least present it here. I think it's very comprehensive and up to date. And I don't know if it's something you want to take under advisement and review and come back to at a future meeting. But a lot of work went into it. So thanks to everybody.
Well, and you miss Sue and Claire. So definitely want to
I meant the personnel committee. Yeah.
You know, throw kudos out to them. So what are you looking for a date? So it needs to come back to us and then it needs to go back to personnel to answer, you know, the 8,000 questions that I'm going to come up with.
Yes.
Okay.
Also, it does need to be finally approved by legal counsel as well. I don't want to put any policies out there without legal counsel approval.
Do you have a date-ish?
I mean, our next meeting is the 23rd. We could look at February. I mean, I know the personnel committee, Sue and Claire, were very anxious to get this put together and out there. So we've spent a lot of time on it. I wouldn't want to delay it too long.
What if
you said?
January 23rd is the next select board meeting.
Okay.
What if we have a chance to look it over this week, and if we do have a lot of questions, would it make sense for us to go to the personnel committee and ask those questions?
Sure. Or if you had questions, you could certainly send them to me and I may very well be able to answer them. If not, I can bring them back to personnel or we can have a joint meeting if need be.
Maybe if you just, well, it depends, I guess. If there's just a couple questions, that's fine. But
I mean, when I was reading it over, most of these individual policies we discussed as they were coming up. We talked to the personnel about them. We had that joint meeting with personnel that went over what were some of the larger substantial changes. Some of the language in here is pretty boilerplate language. And although there were some sentences that I might have written differently if I was on the committee, I didn't find anything sort of wholeheartedly wrong with any of the sentences.
But if any one of us has like a lot of questions, why don't we just either forward them to Kristen or
Right. So I'll put it back on the agenda for the 23rd. If we'd forward our questions to, if we have any to Kristen before that, if there's 2 or 3 of them and they're easy, we can discuss and vote on the 23rd. If not, I can take it off the 23rd agenda until there's more time to get some of those.
Okay, then you can decide that when you set the agenda.
Yep.
I mean, I'd just be curious for personnel's input as well, you know, on these questions. They may have additional information that either is in their head or something like that. So I'd almost prefer personnel to be the one responding. So they're in agreement. You know, again, God forbid, 6 months down the road, policy says X, we all agreed. Someone says, nope, that's not how I interpreted it when I wrote it. So let's just avoid it.
Well, you can always debate I mean, the famous quote, you know, it depends what the definition of is.
I know.
You know, that we can all agree, even with personnel, what we think it's all means now, and that doesn't stop someone 6 months from now having a totally different interpretation.
Then, you know, maybe it is a good idea to, when is personnel's next meeting?
They met last week, so they will meet on the 18th again.
They'll meet on the 18th, which is before our.
Yeah, this is meeting on 23rd. So let's say we have to have any questions we have together by the 18th so we can get the personnel committee.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Let's see, back to today's agenda. So I don't think we're voting on that. And so I think that brings us to board questions, comments, and liaison updates. I think some of the things that happened at the various commissions have already come up on the conversation. So I don't think I have anything to add tonight.
I don't either. I do believe that there's another grab and go for Council on Aging on, is it Wednesday, the 11th?
Yeah, but the menu's already been set, the count's already in, so you can't.
That's true. That's true.
You can't request. I know Victoria has ordered more than what was requested, but not like 85 people more to come on down. So there is a little fluff room, but not a lot.
That's right.
Peg?
That's all I got.
All right, here we start. All right, so Concom, they've been busy. At their last meeting, they adopted 53G, which is a state law. Planning does it, ZBA does it. What it is that it requires an applicant that if outside counsel is needed, that they put money in an escrow account. So that has been worked on, so that's done. They're also working on an A&R, which is an abbreviated notice revolution. So what they're trying to do is potentially not stop, but obviously if you're looking at land, conservation land, wetland, land with foliage in it, wintertime is the perfect time to ask for that because the ground is cold and frozen and well, there's no plants growing. So they're looking at doing something for that to potentially stop filings that are done in the winter just because it's kind of like fake news. You don't have all the information in front of you for that. As Kristen mentioned, I'm going to be meeting with her on the 17th and Mr. Hanks and Frederick to talk about the signs. I've got 13 signs, I think, that I've come up with just by standing in the office and looking around. But obviously, before I go back to Assabet, I would like to get dimensions, height, weight, things like that. I don't want to go back to Assabet and say, hey, we need these slick signs. And they come back and say, oh, here's a 40-pound sign, and Fred laughs and we take out the entire ceiling of the second floor. But I'm going to stop because Eloise has her hand up, and then I'll go.
Yep.
Could you also announce what you're going to talk about at the coffee talk?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
If you've gotten that far.
That's in the announcements folder, Scott, if you want.
Yep. Well, Peg, you continue. I'll pull it up.
Okay. On Wednesday, in the meeting with Kristen, I'm going to assume June as well, to talk about the ADA, get going on that project. Here's the listing of all the items that I put forth in our proposal, our grant proposal. So start to work with the both of them. I'm sure there'll be more people as needed to pull that in and kick that off, as you know, June seems far, far away. Not our June, but the month of June seems far, far away, but obviously will come up upon us, and we need to have work done and signed off of. The Energy Committee, they were talking about updating the electric hybrid policy that they have. It's 10 years old. So obviously I'm sure that there are many things that needed to be changed. But I also know that they're talking to National Grid about fleet advisory in terms of going electric, where Berlin doesn't have any, and I don't think that there's really been any discussion about that. It's a free service. So Energy is going to start looking at what we can do with our fleets for electric cars. And then I don't know what we want to do with this. It kind of goes along with the warrant that we just opened up. If you remember back in May, and I sound like a broken record on this, Earthworks stepped up, said, no, 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 pull the policy. We want to review it. It's now January. I've reached out specifically to members and have had face-to-face conversations that they really need to get something going on this. Actually, the importation of soil discussion came up at finance. So there was a question as well to the Earthworks board. So I know that KP Law joined them together. I know we're tight on budget money. I certainly don't want to go back to KP Law if we don't have to. Margaret had provided information to them on the town of Middleborough and how they kind of sort of got around it, that it was a Board of Health policy or mandate, that it did that. This way they avoided going to town meeting and pushing forth a bylaw. So given that our warrant just opened and it's going to close in a month, suggestions on what to do for Earthworks, or do we just continue to leave the policy as it is and hopefully not get into any more issues with it? I know that there's, you know, major portions of land that has been sold in town. So I'm kind of anticipating that some of these issues might be coming up. There's ongoing issues with soil that has been discussed, but we've heard zero from Earthworks. So Kristen, I don't know what you want to do with them, invite them, see if they'll come to a meeting. But to me, they're the ones who pulled it. They said, nope, no, wait, it's wrong. We'll fix it. And they've gone radio silent since May.
I have good news on that.
Okay.
Mike Sawyer I believe Sawyer was in today.
Yep.
I am meeting with him on Friday to discuss the Earthworks bylaw. And I found the combined one that was drafted already by KP Law. I sent that over along with two other bylaws that I'm familiar with, one that's more restrictive, one that's less restrictive, for them to take a look at. I did look at Middleborough. It's an outright ban. And I don't know how they do it as a policy. Without it as a policy, it's not really enforceable. I'm sorry, without it being a bylaw, it's not really enforceable. So I think we would have better luck putting in a bylaw with restrictions. This is what we did in Leicester. And it worked very well. So I am going to meet though to kick around the ideas on Friday and get started on that.
Yeah, because I know that the person from conservation is kind of out of state for the next 3 months. So I don't know if they want to pull somebody else from conservation in on that, or if they just want to go it alone.
Okay.
And
Maybe,
that was all.
Kristen, you could just give us a recommendation after you talk with Mike.
Sure.
Yeah, 'cause I think at this point, it's going to ultimately be a select board warrant article.
Yeah, I have it on tentatively for May, since we already have something drafted.
Yep.
Okay, all right, as
Well,
long as
let's
that's
make sure
finally
it's
getting,
votable by
I mean, as
end
long
of
as
the
it's finally
month.
getting motion on it. Yep. And yeah, so that was all I had. So Kristen, I will see you at 10 o'clock on Wednesday.
Okay.
Undo.
All right.
I want to point out that we are not meeting next Monday because next Monday is a holiday. But next Thursday is Coffee Talk. It's the informal meeting of the select board. We're not going to be taking any binding votes, designed to try to be a little bit of a free-flowing discussion. We will have State Senator Robin Kennedy with us. We'll have Representative Megan Kilcoyne with us. We will have our new, not yet started, our chief, fire chief in waiting. Is that the right term? We'll be there, so a chance to meet him virtually and hear his story. I will have a presentation from Victoria from the Council of Aging and Social Services Director as basically services and resources that are out there for residents. And then, as always, a bunch of sort of random fun updates from us and Kristen. It will be available on Zoom. I believe it has been posted on the town's website and some of the other social media places. And I'm sure you could reach out to get the details. I think it's actually even the same meeting that we used for this one, right? 155. Yeah. So it's the same channel that you would normally,
is, yes.
watching, would come to on Monday to join us on that day as well. So it starts at 6:30, and so it's 6:30 on Thursday, January 19th. We hope to see people there.
Kristen, did you ever get a chance to circle back to Board of Health? When you were introduced, there were concerns about items that were slipping through the cracks. So did you ever find out what those crack items were?
Yeah, you met with Paul.
Yeah, I thought the concerns were about communication. Did I miss?
It was just a note that I had to make sure that whatever his concerns were, that they were taken care of.
Paul and I have probably met 3 or 4 times, and we've addressed a number of questions that he's had. So I think that we're on good terms there.
Yeah.
So would you like a motion to adjourn, Scott?
Sure, I'd love a motion to adjourn.
All right, I will make the motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Great. I don't know if there's any more discussion on it, so we'll vote. Hawkins, aye.
Keefe, aye.
Stone, aye.
Everyone have a good Martin Luther King Day. Go see the new the Embrace statue at Boston Common, and we'll see people on Thursday.